There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being someone you're no longer meant to be. And if you've been feeling it lately, that heavy tiredness that sleep doesn't touch, that weight you carry even on good days, this isn't burnout. This isn't stress. This isn't you falling behind. And this isn't you failing at life. This exhaustion has a very specific meaning. It only appears when an old version of you is collapsing and a new one is trying to emerge. And most people don't recognize it in time. Stay with me, because this moment is usually misunderstood. People think they need rest, or discipline, or motivation, or a new plan. But what if none of that is the answer? What if the exhaustion you're feeling isn't asking you to recover, but asking you to release? What if the real problem isn't that you're tired, but that the identity you've been carrying no longer fits the person you're becoming? There's a strange phase in life where nothing is technically wrong, yet nothing feels right. Your routines start to feel tight. Conversations that once excited you now feel empty. Goals you worked hard for suddenly feel meaningless. You're not depressed, you're not lost, but you're no longer comfortable pretending. It's like your life doesn't quite fit anymore. There's a quiet tension in your chest, a restlessness you can't explain, a sense that something is ending, even if you don't know what's beginning yet. And deep down, you already know the truth. Something is shifting, not around you, inside you. Let me say this clearly, because this is important. What you're experiencing is not a breakdown, it's not instability, and it's not a personal flaw. This is clearance. Life is removing everything that no longer matches the frequency you're stepping into. You're standing in a psychological and emotional space few people ever reach, the space between identities. Your old self is shrinking. Your old patterns feel restrictive. Your old ways of coping no longer work. But the new version of you hasn't fully formed yet. So you feel suspended, unanchored, exposed. That in-between space feels uncomfortable because there's no script for it, no labels, no external validation. But this is where real transformation happens. Not when everything makes sense, but when the old no longer works and the new hasn't arrived. Most people never allow themselves to stay here. They escape. They distract themselves. They numb the discomfort. They rush back into what's familiar, even if it's suffocating. They say they want change, but only if it doesn't cost them certainty, identity, or approval. So they live their entire lives in the safe middle, not fulfilled, not miserable, just quietly disconnected from who they could have been. But you didn't turn away. You stayed present long enough to feel this, and that means something. Every time you chose growth instead of comfort, every time you faced truth instead of avoidance, every time you stayed in discomfort instead of escaping it, you were building the capacity to stand here. This moment didn't arrive randomly. You earned it. Here's the part nobody prepares you for. Breakthrough doesn't feel like victory at first. It feels like confusion. It feels like loss. It feels like parts of you are dissolving. Because real breakthrough doesn't start with the world changing. It starts with you changing. Your nervous system recalibrates, your tolerance shifts, your standards rise. You stop explaining yourself so much. You stop chasing validation. You stop saying yes just to avoid guilt or conflict. You begin to feel uncomfortable in situations you once accepted, not because you're becoming difficult, but because you're becoming honest. And honesty disrupts everything that relied on your silence, compliance, or self-betrayal. This is not about doing more, achieving more, becoming more impressive. This is about becoming more aligned. And alignment always feels like breaking before it feels like freedom. Here's what makes this phase even harder. Your transformation doesn't happen in isolation. It affects everyone around you. Some people will celebrate you. They'll recognize your growth as permission for their own. But others will resist it, not because you're wrong, but because your evolution exposes what they've been avoiding. Your boundaries challenge their expectations. Your clarity disrupts their comfort. Your self-respect threatens systems that depended on your insecurity. You're becoming dangerous in the best possible way. Dangerous to dynamics where you had to stay small. Dangerous to relationships built on dependency. Dangerous to identities that required you to abandon yourself. This danger isn't loud. It isn't aggressive. It's quiet, grounded, unapologetic. It's the presence of someone who knows their worth and no longer negotiates with it. Here's the truth that changes everything. And it's not the one most people want to hear. Your breakthrough is not coming. It never was. It's already here. It has been here for a while now, quietly reshaping you from the inside out, long before you had words for it. It showed up the moment your old life started to feel too small, the moment your old reactions stopped working, the moment pretending became more exhausting than being honest. Your breakthrough didn't arrive as excitement. It arrived as discomfort, as restlessness, as a low-level grief for a version of yourself that no longer exists. It arrived in the way certain situations stopped triggering you the same way, in the way some conversations began to feel pointless, in the way your body started rejecting what your mind kept trying to justify. This wasn't confusion. This was awareness catching up. Breakthrough doesn't ask if you feel ready. It doesn't wait for confidence, clarity, or permission. Those are conditions the old version of you needed in order to feel safe. But safety is no longer the assignment. Alignment is. And alignment always asks for something in return. It asks you to stop negotiating with your intuition, to stop abandoning yourself, to keep the peace, to stop shrinking just enough to stay accepted. That's why this moment feels heavy, because you're being asked to choose, not between right and wrong, but between familiar and true, between who you've been trained to be and who you already feel yourself becoming. This is why the old patterns feel unbearable now, why old identities feel like costumes, why certain relationships feel like obligations instead of connections. They can't come with you, not because they're bad, not because you've outgrown people in a superior way, but because they were built for a version of you that no longer exists, and trying to carry them forward is what's draining you. So don't ask yourself if you're ready. Ask yourself something far more honest. What am I still holding on to that I know is already over? What parts of my life am I maintaining out of fear instead of alignment? What version of myself am I protecting even though it's costing me my truth? Because this is the moment where everything quietly changes. Not when the breakthrough appears, but when you stop resisting it. When you stop waiting for certainty and start trusting what your body, your intuition, and your clarity have been telling you all along. You are not standing at the beginning of something uncertain. You're standing at the end of something familiar. And that's why it feels so intense. But unfamiliar does not mean unsafe. Unfamiliar is simply the territory of growth. The door to your next chapter is already open. You're not locked out, you're not late, and you're not missing anything. You're standing at the threshold, hesitating only because the old version of you is afraid of being left behind. So this is the only question that matters now. Will you keep trying to fit into a life you've already outgrown? Or will you finally allow yourself to step forward, not as who you were, but as who you are becoming? Because your breakthrough isn't on the horizon. It's happening right now. And it's asking you to choose yourself without waiting, without negotiating, and without apologizing.